Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to Asia House. It's a privilege to gather such a distinguished group for what I know will be an important discussion. We're honoured to be joined today by President Jin Liqun of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. As the bank marked its 10th anniversary, we wanted to create a space for a candid exchange on the shifting landscape of global economic governance. Today is an opportunity to hear directly from the founding president on the institution and how the institution is navigating this fragmenting world and driving the green transition across Asia. Before we begin, I'd like to invite Dominic Barton, the chair of Asia House, to say a few warm words of welcome.
Thank you very much, David. I just wanted to say a few words. First of all, welcome President Jin and also his wife. We're honored to have you here, fellow board members, members of Asia House, and friends. Just a couple of things. This is the first time I'm able to be here in the new capacity, and I can't think of a better way to start than to do this, because President Jin is an old friend, and what he has done at the AIIB, the Asia Infrastructure and Investment Bank, I think is remarkable and is very, in my view, is a sign of the shift in what's happening in the world. And to see what has been done in 10 years to build a world-class institution that's actually very focused on the environment, on the green infrastructure, and is leading the world in that way, and based in Beijing, and I think has made some really important infrastructure and investment decisions on behalf of all of us, of all of this and of all of us. I also just wanted to say, seeing President Jin in action, he's a true globalist. He speaks better English than I will ever speak, but he's a true globalist in how he drives things and runs things, and you'd be so proud to see how international of an organization that is. I'll let others talk about some of the features of the institution, but just again to see the scaling of what's happened. 100 countries, $60 billion deployed, 75 billion more committed by 2030. It's extraordinary. And I think there's a lot for us to learn. So again, President Jin, welcome here on behalf of all of us. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion this afternoon. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Dominic. Convening a group like this depends on strong partnerships, and we're deeply grateful to HSBC for their support in making today possible. To speak about the role of private capital and its alignment with multilateral development, I'm pleased to welcome Sir David Quarry, Group Head of Public Affairs, HSBC.
Thank you very much, and very warm welcome to President Jin, your wife. Great to see you, Dominic. I'm actually not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about something. I will be very brief. It's quite a dangerous thing, President Jin, to speak after two former ambassadors. When I served at the United Nations, it was generally held that the four most dangerous words in the English language were, "I shall be brief." But I shall be brief today, because I think we really want to get to the main business here, and that is to hear from President Jin. As Dominic said, this is a remarkable institution, the AIIB. Its first 10 years, I think, have exceeded all expectations in terms of both volume of capital mobilized, number of projects implemented, and most importantly, in terms of the impact that have been achieved through that time. I think many were skeptical at the start. Almost all have been greatly impressed by the amount of progress made. But as we were just discussing, President Jin, some of the most interesting challenges are those that are yet to come. As AIIB moves on from its first 10 years and starts to become an even more firmly established part of the international institutional framework for mobilizing investment. And I think that is what we are really keen to hear about today. At HSBC's Global Investment Summit in Hong Kong in April, on the one hand, there was quite a lot of doom and gloom at that point, and lots of uncertainty about where the global economy was going. Huge uncertainties about tariffs, about trade, about the impact of all that uncertainty. But there was also, in parallel, a great sense of confidence, and a great sense of confidence particularly about Asia's economic prospects and about the prospects for trade and investment flows within Asia. And I think we have seen that confidence spectacularly proved correct during the course of this year. We see it particularly in Hong Kong, which has had an extraordinary year, and it is great to see that city flourishing again economically. But we've seen it across Asia. We've seen trade flows up, we've seen investment flows up, and we've seen even greater prospects for the future. HSBC is very proud to be part of that picture across Asia. We're very proud of our partnership with Asia House. I think Asia House, your convening role in this more complex, fragmented world has probably never been more important. And AIIB, I think your role is even more important in this fragmented role, but with this great sense of confidence about what is happening economically across Asia. So without further ado, President Jin, we really look forward to, I think it's actually somebody else that's going to introduce you. The retired ambassador can't help but try to introduce somebody when he's not supposed to. But really, we're very proud of our partnership with Asia House, with AIIB, and I so look forward to hearing your words. Thank you.
Thank you, David. As you say, we now turn to our guest of honour. As many of you know, the story of the AIIB's first decade is inseparable from the story of its founding president. In this room, President Jin is rightly recognised as the architect of a modern financial institution. In 10 years, he has taken the AIIB from a concept on paper to a AAA-rated pillar of the global system with more than 100 members and a mandate built around the principles of being lean, clean and green. But the roots of that achievement run much deeper. Before he was reshaping the landscape of development finance, President Jin was a scholar of literature. He translated Ron Chernow's House of Morgan into Mandarin, absorbing the inner workings and moral tensions of Western finance long before he set out to build a new kind of institution himself. And then there's the story that many of us are familiar with as a young man during the Cultural Revolution, working in the countryside by day and reading the complete works of Shakespeare by the light of a kerosene lamp at night. That image is more than biography. It explains something essential about him. The banker's discipline and the humanist's imagination sit side by side. And that's why his leadership has been so distinctive. He understands instinctively that infrastructure is not only about steel and concrete. At its core, it's about the human condition, mobility, connection, dignity, and the ability of societies to function and flourish. That broader understanding has shaped the culture and values of the AIIB from its earliest days. It also underpins the bank's relationship with the United Kingdom. The UK was the first G7 country to join as a founding member, a decision that made headlines at the time and has since been vindicated by a decade of practical, successful cooperation. 10 years on, the AIIB is larger, stronger, and more globally relevant than even its earliest supporters anticipated. And that's due above all to President Jin's steady, thoughtful, and deeply human leadership. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honour to invite President of the Asia Infrastructure Bank, Mr. Jin Liqun.
Thank you very much, ambassadors, Sir David, friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. It's really a great pleasure to be back in London and a particular honor to be here at Asia House. Thank you so much for your nice words. I will try not to be brief this time, but I'm not going to waste your time. I would like to leave time for Q&A. That might be more interesting. I give the whole afternoon to you, and I can stay here as long as you wish. But if anybody has something urgent to do, I hope that you can quietly leave without feeling embarrassed. For 2 decades and counting, this institution has been a bridge between ideas and action, bringing together leaders from business, government, academia, and civil society to think strategically about Asia's place in the world. Few ventures better capture the dialogue between the East and the West. To a certain extent, I never thought Europe, certainly Great Britain, part of Europe, and I have to be very much careful, continental Europe and Great Britain. And I thought Europe and Asia, God made this the whole continent. Why should we humans divide into Asia and Europe? We are one and the same. So, you see, I think when we try to set up this bank, we always keep Europe in my mind. It's also a privilege to be joined today by Dominic Barton, Ambassador Barton, and to congratulate you on assuming the chairmanship of the Asia House, a role well matched to your long-standing engagement with Asia's economic transformation. When you served as Canada's ambassador to China, I had the privilege of having lunch with you in our institution and discussed a lot of things. And I remember you look at what we did over that time and said, this is truly a multilateral development bank. Let me begin with gratitude. The United Kingdom played a decisive role in the creation of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. It was the first G7 nation, the first in Europe, to announce it would join in the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. And it did not merely join. You helped shape and build our institution. The act of confidence remains one of the clearest examples of constructive leadership and a belief in the promise of multilateral action. For that, the bank and I personally remain deeply grateful. For my talk this afternoon, I'd like to share my thoughts on 5 questions or issues about the world we share: the state of global governance, the future of Asia, the fate of multilateralism, and of course, the story of AIIB, its first decade, and what lies ahead. First question: can international cooperation still deliver in an age of fragmentation? When Shakespeare wrote, I cannot avoid quoting Shakespeare. When Shakespeare wrote in Hamlet, "The time is out of joint," he was describing medieval Denmark. Many in this room may feel the same about our world today. Challenges stretch as far as the eye can see. Rising debt, widening inequality, and sharply shrinking in budget. Geopolitical fragmentation weakened trust and drifted toward protectionism. Technology racing ahead of governance, and a climate crisis that is destroying lives and livelihoods, and probably the future of our children and the children's children. And beneath all, a vast demographic shift. By 2050, more than 85% of humanity will live in countries we still call developing today. In the next 15 years, the World Bank and ILO estimate that 1.2 billion young people will enter the workforce, competing for roughly 400 million jobs. I hope this estimate would be too conservative, too pessimistic. This means 4 young people will step into the labor market every second, even as automation and artificial intelligence transform the very nature of work. Meanwhile, 2/3 of the infrastructure the world will need by mid-century has not yet been built. And those who are being run here has to be maintained. This is not only a developmental challenge, it is a stability challenge. Development today is not charity, it is strategic necessity. So the question is not whether cooperation still matters, it is how we make it work again? To answer that, it helps to look back. And to continue the line from Shakespeare with a touch of paraphrasing, perhaps we should not overplay the note that AIIB was born to set it all right. It might be too ambitious. But if Hamlet himself said, the time's out of joint, or cursed by it, I was born to set it right, as a single person, why shouldn't we say an institution? Actually, it's not one institution. When we say we were ever born to set it right, we mean we, all the development institutions, all of the development partners, all of those who are focused on making this world better. But I do believe that multilateral development banks, other development institutions, partners, and all those committed to multilateralism can help hold this out-of-joint world together if we work as a team. Second question, what can we learn from the world Bretton Woods built? 80 years ago, leaders gathered in Bretton Woods to design a new economic order from the wreckage of the Second World War. Their vision was bold: to replace chaos with cooperation, violence with the rule of law or international rule of law, and to build prosperity on shared rules and shared responsibility. At its very core, the Bretton Woods institutions were created to pave the path for lasting peace and broad-based wealth. Those leaders understood that peace required not only treaties and borders, but also architecture of finance, trade, and trust, where every nation, large or small, would have a voice in shaping the rules of global governance. That vision endured, not because it was flawless, far from it, but because it evolved. For all its practical imperfections, the Bretton Woods system underwrote decades of peace and prosperity. China is a nation which has benefited from the Bretton Woods institutions and the post-war international global order. The Chinese leader spoke on many occasions. China has no intention whatsoever to overthrow or upset this international order built up since the end of the World War II. China only wants to contribute and to work with us to improve so that it would fit into the new century. So, where every nation, large or small, would have a voice in shaping the rules of global governance, and we say, in spite of some of the flaws, the Bretton Woods system could contribute. And we know it helped rebuild shattered economies, expand free trade, and lay the groundwork for the most dramatic poverty reduction in human society. China lifted 800 million people out of poverty in a matter of decades. And I can quote almost verbatim what President Xi said when 57 founding members came to Beijing to sign the Articles Agreement. And this is what he said. I said almost verbatim. He said, ever since China opened up and launched the reform program, we have benefited so much from the support of the World Bank, later on AIIB, and many bilateral support. Now that China has developed, it's China's turn to contribute. This bank, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, must be run by international standards. This is what he said. In 1980, 40% of the world still lived on less than $3 a day. Today, that number is about 10%. Yet while poverty has fallen, insecurity has grown, unfortunately, in developing and advanced economies alike. If the 21st century's multilateralism rebuilt a broken world, the 21st centuries must renew a divided one. Power is more dispersed, and global governance knows no single reigning power. Which brings me to my next question. Third question. What kind of multilateral institutions fits this new age? Let me share why our young institution demonstrates the continued power of multilateralism and what its first decade reveals or tells us what still works. When AIIB was established in 2016, it was not created to add another acronym to the alphabetical soup. It was created to fill a gap, first and foremost, the vast infrastructure gap across Asia and the global south, and also a gap in global governance, where developing and emerging economies deserve a stronger voice in shaping global development. Today, we have grown from 57 founding members to 105 full members, representing over 80% of the world's population and more than 2/3 of global GDP. Now the total number is 111. 105 is a full member. 6 are on their way to become a full member. Our bank was created as both a continuation and an evolution. Evolution and continuation, carrying forward the best of the Bretton Woods tradition while adapting it to the demands of today's world. From the start, we often described ourselves as lean, clean, and green. Lean in structure, to stay agile, clean in governance, to earn trust, green in purpose, to align growth with sustainability. You know why I coined this term? This is our basic principle. Because when I started to chair the interim secretary for setting up this bank, I heard some sarcastic comments. Some Chinese is going to set up this bank. China, so many corruptions going on in this country. So they did not expect this bank to be clean. And that's my most important thing, okay? This bank must be squeaky clean. And the president elected must be squeaky clean. Otherwise, we don't have to do any of this. And I said, yes, China's cracking down corruption. Corruption is a serious problem. But those countries who are silent about corruption may not mean that they are cleaner. Okay, so lean, clean, and green. Our job is to grow, to help our members to grow and to green their economies. We've been doing this over the last 10 years. We built AIIB to fit our time from the very outset. We designed a bank that is all muscle and no fat, focused, efficient, and built to deliver. When the idea of creating a new multilateral development bank first emerged, rumors were rampant. Rumors were rife. Some believed it would undercut the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and others. Others assumed it would simply serve the foreign policy agenda of the largest shareholder. And people were trying to see what the biggest axe China is going to grind. As Mary Crawford quipped in Jane Austen's Mansfield Park, she said, selfishness must be forgiven, you know, because there's no hope of a cure. I would say instead, skepticism must be forgiven, and there is hope of a cure. That cure lies in what we do to earn trust. When we got the first AAA rating from the 3 rating companies, only 17 months into operation, I had a small party. I said, congratulations to all. we got AAA from 3 rating companies. Please keep this in mind. This is not PhD degree. After you earn your PhD degree, you don't have to write a single word. And this PhD would go with you all the way to the last day in this world. Not AAA rating. You have to keep it every day. So this is the warning. And I said, trust cannot be demanded. It must be built. It must be earned. And it must be maintained with what you do, not what you say. That is why, from the very outset, we made great efforts to invite the United Kingdom, European partners, as well as the United States, Japan, to participate. And let me correct a misconception. Those countries did not simply join the bank. They joined in creating the bank. And ever since then, we have worked steadily to strengthen the governance and run it to the highest possible standards. I still remember the dinner I had with Barbara, your former ambassador to China, and we had a very good time together. In 25th Qianmen, that's the former American embassy to Qing dynasty. So we had a very good celebration. And I told Barbara, I said, UK announced it would join in this bank. Once again, the Chinese people feel the great power of Great Britain. Because of you, you joined all of those countries, rushed to run it. A decade on, our bank has many distinctive features to recommend itself. First, ours is a modern multilateral, majority owned by developing countries, governed by consensus, offering equal terms for all borrowers and supported by non-resident board designed for efficiency and accountability. Second, ours is a disciplined financial actor. We have maintained AAA credibility and a rigorous risk control mechanism for long-term profitability. Nearly half of our projects are co-financed with our sister development institutions, because by partnering with others, we scale our impact. I have long followed a simple principle, another of my invention, which is no to no. What does that mean? I will not say no to the no expressed by the chief risk officer if he turns down a project. And I said, if the chief risk officer, unfortunately he's a French, very conservative. That's good, actually. Antoine Castel, a French, he's a veteran banker for many years. And I told him, he said, if you don't feel comfortable with any project, just say no. And I will not say no to you. I do acknowledge, because you are conservative, because risk managers have to be conservative to a certain extent, we may reject some projects which could turn out to be very good ones. But that's the price we have to pay to avoid dictatorship. Is that right? Nothing's perfect in this world. But if the president of this bank say, you have to do this for me, he may be right, but again and again and again, you see, why certain leaders of an institution, why certain leaders of a country eventually fell? Because of their good decisions. Again and again and again, they almost become the god. And then one day they make a catastrophic mistake. The whole empire they built collapsed. This is what we have to avoid. And that is why we have to pay the price. That's no to no. This is my patent, okay? You can do it, but you cannot use it today. Third, we safeguard the independence of our critical oversight functions. The Complaints Resolution Evaluation Integrity Unit, the Chief Internal Auditor, and the Chief Ethics Officer. Those offices operate free from any interference by the President or other senior management members. Their autonomy is essential to maintaining the credibility and accountability of our institution. A couple of weeks ago, we hosted the 25th International Investigators Conference in AIIB. And I told them, and they interacted with our people. It's very interesting. Some people remarked, they say, oh, we never thought China would be so good. I said, what do you mean by that? Which means China would be so good as to allow the president to manage this bank free of any troubles, any interferences. Because I told them, the chief risk officer, chief ethics officer, chief internal auditor, and the chief of the CIU, integrity unit, if they suffer from my interference, they should quit. The bank should shut down. And they looked at me. I think they are convinced. Fourth, and fundamentally, we stay true to a clearly defined mandate, financing infrastructure for tomorrow. This leads naturally to the frequently asked question, why world infrastructure decide development outcomes in this century? Infrastructure has always been the foundation of opportunity, but what it means to build infrastructure is changing. It is no longer only about steel and concrete. It's about system, natural, digital, and cross-border that allows societies to thrive. Seen this way, nature itself is infrastructure. Forests that regulate water, mangroves that defend coasts, and soils that store carbon are not simply environmental goods. They are productive systems that sustain economies. Yet they rarely appear on balance sheets. If we can measure what they deliver, we can value and finance them just as we do roads and power grids. In the Philippines, for instance, mangrove restoration now shields coastal communities as effectively as sea walls, but at a fraction of the cost. When investors can price the resilience, they will help build it. Recognizing nature as infrastructure protects lives, reduces fiscal risk, and channels private capital towards planet's essential system. And today, infrastructure is also digital and connective. Broadband, data centers, energy grids, and transport corridors move not only goods and power, but ideas and opportunity. Together, they form the connective tissue of shared prosperity, linking people, markets, and nations in ways that make growth more inclusive and sustainable. This broader understanding of infrastructure is at the very heart of our bank's work. And nowhere is that work more urgent than in Asia. Asia remains both a principal engine of global growth and laboratory of solutions, from renewables at scale to digital public infrastructure to regional cooperation. Its diversity is its strength. From Dhaka to Seoul, from Jakarta to Dubai, Asia has shown there are many pathways to prosperity. There's no single model, but there is a constant strategic planning, disciplined investment, and openness. Asia's development story also offers a practical lesson. Many economies in this region paired open markets with deliberate, time-bound public bets on electronics manufacturing in Malaysia, shipbuilding in Korea, and financial services and urban renewal in Singapore. These were not blank checks. They were disciplined choices, backed by state capacity, clear sunset clauses, and accountability for results. The deeper point is not ideology, but execution. Where governments could set a clear direction, crowd in private capital, and course correction quickly, They unlock intergenerational gains in productivity, exports, and jobs. The same blend of planning, pragmatism, and partnership will be essential for the green transition and the digital transition ahead. At AIIB, we think of state capacity as a kind of invisible infrastructure. It is the platform on which everything else, finance, technology, and markets, can scale. When capacity is strong, good projects become bankable faster. When it's weak, even cheap capital can stall. Much of our work, therefore, is about pairing finance with reforms that improve project pipelines and de-risk private investment. There's also a governance lesson from Asia. For example, ASEAN's habit of consultation and consensus, though sometimes slow, often steady, has helped diverse countries cooperate across hard differences. AIIB reflects that same instinct. We are majority owned by developing economies, but our board decides strategy and policy by consensus. In a shifting world, that approach doesn't lower standards. It raises buy-in and durability. It also reassures established powers that their voices still shape outcomes as representation evolves. So when Asian developing countries and non-Asian developing countries form the majority shareholder of this bank, how the European shareholders feel comfortable? It's very important for us to have them. Check and balance. Majority shareholder by developing countries does not mean European shareholders, developed countries are marginalized. Instead, if you look at the senior management team, most of them are from the developed countries. They are professionals from many European countries, Canada, United States, and we also have Japanese nationals working here. Asia's success, if it's to be sustained, needs to address a hard constraint: climate risk. Coastal megacities, floodplains, and drought-prone interiors face mounting pressures. The task is to sustain growth while accelerating resilience and decarbonization. Meeting that dual challenge is exactly what our bank's work begins, and why our work is organized around 4 strategic priorities. First, green infrastructure. In Uzbekistan, we are supporting the country's largest solar plant, clean power for hundreds of thousands of homes. Second, connectivity and regional cooperation. In Lao PDR and Vietnam, a cross-border wind project we co-finance delivers green power where it's needed. Prove that regional grids can cut costs and emissions together. Similar principles guide our support for India's metros and Central Asia's transport corridors, each connecting markets and people in practical, lasting ways. Third, technology-enabled infrastructure. In Indonesia, and AIIB supported satellite now connects over 45 million people in remote communities, linking schools, clinics, and small enterprises to the digital economy. Last but not the least, private capital mobilization. Public money will never be enough. Through securitization platforms, we recycle bank balance sheets and bring institutional investors into Asian infrastructure as an asset class. And through our support for climate-related policy reforms, we help governments attract private capital for adaptation and mitigation. In less than a decade, we have invested over $66 billion in over 345 projects across 39 countries. We plan to deploy another $75 billion by 2030. This job has been done by our staff. Today, we have 800 from just a dozen, 800 professionals coming from 70 countries. These are not just figures or forecasts. They are lives connected, jobs created, emissions avoided, communities protected. Evidence that multilateralism still works when it is disciplined, inclusive, and focused. My final question brings me back to where we began. How do we renew cooperation in a world of growing division? As we work on building bridges, there are forces pulling the world apart. Economic, technological, and political fragmentation makes every global problem harder and tougher to deal with, and every solution costlier. It raises barriers to trade, slows the green transition, and deepens mistrust. The answer is not to deny differences, but to manage them responsibly. We need to strengthen and support our global architecture of cooperation so that it can better withstand the pressures of geopolitics and polar polarization. That is what multilateral institutions provide at their very best. Neutral platforms, shared standards, and trust. And as traditional aid contracts, the role matters even more. Development today depends on mobilizing private finance and aligning global standards to scale what works. Global forums such as the G20 can set the vision. Institutions like ours exist to make it real. Multilateral development banks, in particular, are systemic stabilizers. We are the practical arm of global governance, translating principles into projects, turning shared responsibility into shared investment. Looking back, I believe that AIIB's great achievement is not its balance sheet, but its credibility, earned through standards, inclusiveness, and practical proof that multilateral created Asia can serve the whole world. It's not the credibility of China alone. It's the credibility of developing countries. When developing countries continue to grow, I believe they would work better with the existing developed countries. Recently, I made a comment. Probably decades to come, there are only two groups of countries in this world: AI developed country and AI developing country. So those countries who now enjoy lots of advantages in technology, in resources, should not relax in their efforts to develop digital economy, AI, whereas at the same time they should help developing countries to do the same. It depends on international cooperation. Our bank will hold fast to what has guided us from the start: clarity of mission, discipline in finance, and partnership by default. With this, multilateralism will not only endure, it will deliver results people can see and feel. Now that AIIB has crossed over the milestone of a decade, it is going to be a teenager. When it's a kid, very small, people are more tolerable. When it's a teenager, less tolerable, and teenager probably is even harder to manage. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, President Jin. Plenty to unpack there. We've got some time for questions. I know most of you, but not all of you, so if you could just introduce yourself, your name and your affiliation, it would be much appreciated. If you could raise your hands. Yes, just one here.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Jane, and everyone for sharing your insights. There's certainly a lot to unpack. So my name is Xiaofang Xu. I'm based in London, working for an engineering consultancy firm called AIIB. So my personal background, just to introduce, in case the question isn't super financial. So my background is a chartered engineer. specialized in the energy sector, also a Chinese, grew up in China. My question for Mr. Jin is, given all the history, your insights, knowledge, it's not the first energy transition that we're going through in the world. That might be driven by different drivers, and given the now the climate crisis and also the need to be more sustainable for kids, or the kids of kids in the future. I'm very curious or keen to learn the AIIB's role, given its influential at global scale, the role in promoting or supporting such energy transition in the modern world. Thank you.
Thank you. You hit the nail on the head, highlighting the importance of energy. The human society, I think, made a great progress, or jumped up to a high level ever since the human society could have reliable, continuous energy supply. And then electricity makes the real difference. Without electricity, all of this modern world, modern amenities we enjoy could not be talked about. But we now depend very much on fossil fuel. The other day, I talked to some of the people, and I said, when Adam and Eve were expelled from Eden, God said, because of your original sin, you have to dig the earth to survive, to make your own bread. Okay, you have to earn your bread with your sweat, dig the earth. But God said, I did not tell you to dig thousands of meters under the ground. I didn't tell you to do that. Not original sin, second sin. You have to deal with that.
Thank you.
How? No problem. Humans are very good at making mistakes, and even better in correcting the mistakes. All the energy comes from the solar, except the nuclear power, right? And then you have wind, you have solar and hydro. My view is we would further improve the technology to use the solar energy more effectively. For instance, so far the solar panel certainly is very good, but producing it and dispose of this kind of thing is also very much polluting. Yeah. And a wind farm, you never know what it means for some of the other species, insects and small creatures. And also sometimes the real estaters hate it, because when you build a wind farm, their real estate value goes down. I think all these kind of technology are still primitive. You never know what's going to happen. 30, 40, half next century, we may use the solar more effectively and aesthetically better. The way to handle that is we have to use the current technology, do whatever it takes, and then we move on. With regard to nuclear power, I think the nuclear power technology, the fourth generation, is already very, very good. I often said there are 3 disasters. 3 Mile Island. I went by 3 Mile Island, many years ago in Pennsylvania. It was such a sorry story. Chernobyl and Fukushima. People learn from the Fukushima lesson the wrong way. It's not the nuclear reactor, it's the cooling system. If people had built the breakwater 5 meters higher, nothing would have happened. So do not learn the lesson the wrong way. If we humans can create foolproof camera, why not foolproof nuclear power stations? Let's go on, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, President Jin, for a very interesting talk. My name is Linda Calabrese. I work as a researcher in a think tank called ODI Global. I wanted to ask you, we're in a world of a decline, a retrenchment of aid. Some people call it a post-aid world. There's less and less finance for development and for development goals. How do you think that's going to affect AIIB and the MDBs in general? Thank you.
I think the most important thing is for all of these multilateral development banks to work together as a team, as a system. We may have different kind of labor. We may work with different kind of focuses. But I think it's very much important for us to work in close collaboration. I think it's a tripartite kind of thing. I would say, if I understand your question correctly, certainly the MDBs and other development partners, the clients, the client members, and the private sector. The three most essential players in promoting the development, in my view, is very, very important. Private sector mobilization is, to a certain extent, a challenge, not because they are not willing to invest in the low-income countries, but because they are unsure about the risks, right? So we believe now it's important for us to help them improve the institutional capacity, state governance. We have policy-focused, climate-based policy lending. This is not a blank check. It's only to help them to improve the regulatory environment so that the private sector investor would be willing to come in and invest. Uncertainty comes in different kind of ways. For instance, some private companies would like to work with us because whenever there are troubles, we'll talk to the government, solve the problems. When a country is running out, their foreign exchange reserve is running very low, you want to convert your income, your profit, dividend, into foreign exchange and repatriate. Sometimes it's very difficult. But when the private sector work with us, and it could be resolved. But I don't think they should come to us each and every time. Let's improve the regulatory environment. So my view is, I often talk to client governments. If your policy is credible, if there's any change, only change for the better, you have no worries. Every day we have 2 or 3 trillion US dollars moving around the planet. They're circling this planet, doing what? Trying to find a safe landing strip. And our job is just about that. So I mean, development banks, other development partners, our client governments, and private sector. Thank you.
Just want to pick up on what you said about the importance of collaboration between the development banks. How effective is that collaboration at the moment? What different forums are there for you to collaborate and engage, and how can it be improved?
We have heads of MDBs meetings twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year. Spring meeting, annual meeting of the World Bank, IMF World Bank. Sometimes we had heads of MDB meetings in Davos. And this time, His Majesty is calling a heads of MDB meeting December the 1st. And I think it indicates also UK's attention to the role of the MDBs. And we work as a team. We lay our heads together, literally, and often exchange ideas. So we call it working as a system. Okay, but there's a still division of responsibility. And once I was in Washington, I think last year I was in Washington attending the spring meeting. A good friend of mine who used to be a senior manager in the World Bank asked me, what are you going to do? I said, we're going to have the heads of MDB meetings. He said, working in the World Bank for 30, 40 years, I never heard about that. Yeah.
So more to do than perhaps on the working
because they did not talk to each other in those days. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Right. We've got time for some more questions. Yes.
Thank you so much. This is Yi Li from Bank of China, London. Actually, David has touched on my topic, my question on the role of AIIB within MDBs. And now I kind of want to tweak it into asking, what do you think would be the strengths of AIIB within the system? Because as you know, the likes ADB kind of covers Asia as well, and EFAD also have been led by developing leaderships for a very long time. So where do you think AIIB sets itself apart from the rest of its peers within the system? Thank you.
You know, thank you very much for the question. It's always very risky to respond to your question because I would hate to advertise ourselves, and I'm worried over any comments which might be understood to disparage other institutions. So it's very hard to say. But let me say that we learn a lot from the well-established institutions. Frankly speaking, the Articles of Agreement incorporates all these strong points, experience of the other institutions. I worked on the board of the World Bank 6 years, 5 years as the vice president in the management team of ADB. So I said, when we build this bank, we should pick up the pluses and avoid the minuses from those institutions. And I was careful enough to indicate that if there are some of the issues of redundancy, maybe the wastefulness of this kind of other institutions, please understand, they were established 80 years ago, half a century ago, and it's very hard to avoid some of these problems. Sometimes they made mistakes. We will also make mistakes, moving forward. But we can learn from them. Okay. To err is human, and people say to forgive is divine, right? I always say to err is human. Not to correct the mistakes others made is stupid. So we learn from others, and I'm happy to hear that some other institutions are picking up something from us, which is really very good. For instance, we keep very lean, no redundancy. We have a non-resident board. I know the tough debate between John Maynard and Keynes, who wanted to have a non-resident board, and Harry Dexter White, the US Treasury official, who wanted a resident board. Who is right? And if we, AIIB, could have this, I believe Keynes is right.
Thank you. Good. I'm going to take 2 more questions. Have we got time for that? Yes.
Hello, my name is Mohamed Çetin. I'm the representative of Turkish Central Bank. Thank you for such an inspiring speech to us. First of all, I would like to say your remarks suggested that trust itself functions like infrastructure and shaping whether projects succeed or fail. You describe trust and institutional credibility as almost a form of invisible infrastructure. In a more fragmented and polarized world, what is the most realistic way multilateral banks can build that trust beyond balance sheets and ratings? Thank you.
When we all come together to set up this bank, as I said just now, it was certainly very hard to convince people from the very outset. And if you cannot convince people, particularly those who are very much dedicated to multilateralism, to high standards, it's almost impossible to build a bank as we expect. So we tried very hard. We have an American lawyer who worked with the World Bank to be the chief counsel to draft the Articles of Agreement, even though the United States decided not to join. But when they heard about this, they feel, well, that's good. Mr. Jin is hiring an American to draft the Articles of Agreement. And then we have an American national to take care of the finance earlier on. So, and then we have Europeans, those people coming. Now quickly, you will find the credibility is being built up. So it's not that easy. But if you are sincere, if you really want to do something you think is important, I think it could be possible. As I said, trust is to be earned, right? And how do you earn it? I would say penny by penny, pound by pound, little by little. And French said, petit à petit, l'oiseau fait son nid. The little bird builds a nest little by little.
Thank you. Right, time for one more question. Yes, just at the...
Thank you very much for your presentation. My name is Qi Zhao, and I come from World Nuclear Association, which is the industry association for nuclear, specifically nuclear energy. So I really appreciate your very positive comments on nuclear energy, and I would like to bring the question back to that topic. So what would be AIIB's position on nuclear projects in the future? Is AIIB considering to change your position given that your peer MDBs, World Bank, and EBRD are changing to be more positive, and given the nuclear revival in the world and AIIB regions?
Thank you. Thank you very much. World Bank has announced that it would consider financing nuclear power plants. This, I think, is right, is the right one. Because only by nuclear power stations could it be possible, for instance, for many countries to provide base load in electricity supply. Of course, security, safety is the priority. But with the technology advanced to such a stage, I don't think, as I said, it should be a problem. But if we are ever to finance the nuclear power, I set some conditions to my management team. I said, we can consider, first of all, we will not be the first. We would work with the World Bank because even though they do not have nuclear experts, they have more capacity, but we can co-finance with the World Bank. Okay. For any nuclear power stations, wherever it's built, I set two basic conditions. First, the company who operates this nuclear power station must have international experts, managerial experts, and technical experts. I cannot find nuclear power in country A. The managers are all country A's people. Technical people are all, I will not do that. It must be a company whose managers, technicians are merit-based and internationally competitive. That is the fundamental thing. And secondly, any government of any of climate member countries should not interfere inappropriately with the management of nuclear power. Otherwise, disaster probably would be inevitable.
Good, thank you. Very interesting, insightful, wide-ranging discussion, lots of ground covered. I'm going to draw formal proceedings to a close now. I know President Jin has kindly agreed to stay on all afternoon. You may regret that. But there'll be plenty of opportunity for discussion over coffee. So thank you very much indeed for that speech, for your very thoughtful and considered answers to the questions, and we look forward to continuing the conversation for a while longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.